Okay, folks, could we settle in, call the meeting to order, please? Just before we start, I'd like to make a couple of comments about Raymond Murphy. Many of you know Raymond Murphy over the years that you've been involved with municipal politics, and perhaps some of you when you're in education. He was a teacher for a long period of time. Unfortunately, Raymond passed away very recently at the age of 69. He's from Rexton, where he was a teacher for many, many years, but most of us know him that since 2003, he was executive director of the Union of the Municipalities of New Brunswick. He had taken ill in the last couple of years and finally succumbed last week, unfortunately. So in memory of the man, I would ask that we just take a moment's silence to think of him. Thank you. More mundane things. Any motion for the approval of the agenda? Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Takes us to question period. Any questions from the audience?
Mayor, councillors, I'm Sharon Hicks. Last week I distributed to members of council a document I compiled which included research findings and various observations and ideas on the future development of Exit 506 area. In particular, there was a considerable amount of information relating to whether the town should allow restaurants with drive-through windows near Exit 506. Since council now has had a chance to think about this information, I have 3 questions. First, how many of you or members of your families use drive-thrus? Think about that. Okay. Next, last year when the decision was made to uphold the ban from 16 years ago against any additional drive-thrus, was any research at all done by council or town staff, or was the decision based just on personal opinions? Nobody has anything? Okay. No answers to that then.
Sorry, say the question again, please.
Last year, when you voted to uphold the ban from 16 years ago, was any research done by councillors or by town staff, or was the vote just based on personal opinions?
Well, I guess there's 2 replies to that. One is
Okay.
that, as you know, it was received by the previous council.
Yes.
And we did receive some information from the various agencies.
Okay.
And it was presented to us at the very first meeting we had.
Okay.
To act on. And the question wasn't about, it was about whether we would change the zoning bylaw. So the question was addressed by the information that we were supplied at that time.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And finally, my closing comment in the document that I gave you stated that bylaws everywhere are amended and replaced all the time as conditions or needs change. Given the information that I presented in that document, is council now willing to take another look at zoning bylaw 244? And will council consider making amendments so that our town can then attract further economic development in the form of restaurants with drive-thrus at Exit 506?
Well, I think that, excuse me, when we spoke about it a year ago, and the idea came up that if there was to be appropriate development at Exit 506, that we should be clear that we don't repeat the mistakes as 504.
Right.
And that there should be 2 steps to that. One was the question of the infrastructure and determining what infrastructure needs might come out of that. And 2 was whether the existing zoning was appropriate for that area.
Okay.
So certainly I think we indicated that that was going to come back to the council at some point in the future.
Okay. Okay. That's good. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. We shall move on to item 4, Councillors, you've all had a look at the agenda. Are there any disclosures of interest for the agenda items tonight? Hearing none, we move on to item 5. You've all had opportunities to look at the various, that we have 4 sets of minutes. I'll turn it over to Councillor to move or... So closed in camera meeting July 10th, moved to approve by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Regular council of July 10th on page 4 of your package.
I'll move the adoption.
Moved by Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. Special meeting of August the 8th on page 13 of your package. Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Evans. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. And closed in camera special meeting of council August 8th on page 17. Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Evans. Questions? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Are there any business arising from the minutes that is not on the agenda? No? We're moving right along. Number 7, Southeast Regional Services Commission. This will be very quick because we did not have a meeting last month. So I have nothing to report from the commission meeting of last month. On to planning.
In the month of July, there were 8 permits total issued in Sackville. This brought the yearly total up to 26 permits with a construction value of $10.9 million. Compared to last year, 27 permits were issued at this time for a construction value of $2 million. The main difference here is there's been 3 houses issued to date, whereas we had, I believe, only 1 last year, as well as 2 institutional alterations as well. There was no development requests that required approval or recommendations from the Planning Review Committee in July. And other projects that were worked on for Sackville this month consisted of preparing a number of maps for town staff. So if there's any further questions.
Any questions on the planning report? Councillor Evans?
Laura, you explained that there were roughly the same number of permits the last 2 years, but it was about 5 times as much this year. And the explanation was not clear to me.
So the 2 types of permits that generate the most value tend to be, well, definitely the top one would be institutional permits. They usually carry $1 million construction price tags. The other one is new houses. So they tend to be in excess of usually this now 150 plus. So last year I believe we only had 1 new house constructed in Sackville. This year we have 3 to date, and we had 2 large institutional renovation projects.
Thank you. It's just my hearing, not your explanation.
Any other questions? None. We shall move on to reports. We'll start with the mayor's report as it's next in line. And as usually, it's not in your package. It's a handwritten notes kept beside my desk. A few of us attended Dorchester's Sandpiper Festival / Early New Brunswick Day. We had a couple of opportunities to chat briefly with the Premier on a couple of fronts. Dorchester put on a really good show. It was actually quite enticing to hear with the JJ brought in a drumming group from Tobic, and he brought in an elder from Pabineau, and Fort Folly was invited but could not attend. Something had come up, so they had quite an interesting mix of people on the stage and background to what they wished to talk about for New Brunswick Day and that activity. There's been a whole bunch of calls on Maloney, so we're still holding out hope on this. It looks like we'll see in the next couple of weeks if that's going to happen or not. Several nonprofit groups have asked for my time to talk about what they might plan for next year. And I think that's a good sign that they're thinking about what supports they might bring to next year's agenda. And I'd never fail to tell them that it'll be a difficult year for the town because of the revenue freeze, and we'll be glad to have their assistance. Also met with the Commons on the same sorts of things. They too are working on several grants right now that may be able to support some of the areas we'd like to act in, so that's good. There's also a first meeting of the startup groups, of which Commons is one of the 5 in the province, I believe, and they'll be having a kind of a checkpoint meeting to see how everybody is doing, and it's about focusing on how they will assist with potential business ideas in their local communities. So we'll see how that goes. If anybody's interested in attending, let me know. Some of you saw the opportunities in the paper. We had replanted a tree that Mount Allison students had planted a few years ago that unfortunately passed away. We replaced that in the same position, and we tried to recreate the same photo, although a different mayor and different students this time. Similarly with the crosswalks, most of you were all there. We attended NB Day, and most of you attended that as well. I have made contact, as I said I would, with the high school principal about setting up an opportunity to speak with the students early in the new year. They think it's a great idea. They're actually thinking of several ways to do it, and so we'll touch base between now and when the school opens and figure something in September where we may start this type of a discussion with the students about what the town could do to keep them here, or what the town could do to develop business ideas they may have. The property tax freeze, for those who don't know, the Premier has, of course, announced that the property tax rate will be set at the same as the previous year. Well, it will be frozen at the assessed value of last year, and generally tax assessment will go up 1 or 2%. So that will not happen this year. There is also the probability that because of the way the tax assessment was carried out this year, 93% of those who have appealed those rates have won. So if it does mean that, it may actually mean a reduction in revenue for us. So we have to be well prepared for that. I got a call about the end of Stevens Drive, and we're having a discussion with that about staff. There's a small portion of it that is not paved, and the school bus has to go into it and back out and around. And the staff are now looking at what the possibilities might do to facilitate the school bus not having to back up and let children off, and B, to get that little area that's not paved, perhaps paved. I've been in contact a couple of times with a former deputy mayor of town who was deputy mayor in the 60s when the large flood, the freshwater flood, happened down on Lawrence Street. He has offered to, he's actually described a couple of times the movies. He actually has movies of the water coming through town, and some recollections of other flows that he describes quite vividly about where the water was coming from down through the middle of town and up from along the railway tracks, the difficulties they had in the past with CN and the highway sound familiar, some 60 years later. And he's offered to provide that to staff, and we may have an opportunity to see some of that ourselves. Just to finish, we did write a letter to CN and send it electronically to them in follow-up to our meetings in Ottawa, where the CAO and Councillor Blackett and myself met with the senior VP, and we got a revised relationship started, and it seems to be going well. And the letter basically said thank you very much for that mandate. Things are moving well with your staff locally. We're very pleased with this and trust we can continue this and perhaps move on to other topics in the future. And that's about it. Any questions on that, folks? No? Okay, thank you. And we will move from the mayor's report to the CAO report.
Thank you, Your Worship. My report's on page 19 in the package. And again, you'll note from the various reports, it's once again another busy month for staff in all departments, and those reports will be coming forward throughout the evening, and a lot of detail will be provided during that time. We're also having a number of visitors in town, which seems to be on par with past years, today in particular, with over 400 people visiting the town, with new students coming in for Mount A for the who will be here for the next 2 weeks. Also, too, just as the mayor has noted, with the property freeze, it will have some implications when we go through our budget process in the fall of the year, but pleased to say our treasurer is already looking ahead, and certainly as far as 2017 goes, we're, things are stable, and there's no anything of extraordinary concern there. So it's a matter of doing what we need to do in terms of the 2018 budget. So I'm sure all of us will have a hand in that and look to review the options available to us. So anyways, as I say, there's more details in all the reports that are coming forward, but if there's any questions the council has, I'd certainly be prepared to address them.
Any questions on the CAO report? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Henderhan. We'll go to report C, Finance and Admin. Deputy Mayor Aiken? Oh, Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have the bills and payroll. The information is on page 20 and 21. I don't believe there's any great outstanding numbers to be looked at. And the overtime explanations are in there, so I will be prepared to make the motion now if there are no questions. I move that council accept the bills and payroll for the month of July 2017 as follows. General Government, $405,864.53. General Capital, $783,197.05. Utility Government, $68,517.17. Utility Capital, $2,794.50. And salaries of $333,558.38.
Moved by Councillor Tower. Seconded by Councillor Black. Questions?
Questions?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Now go.
Tag team.
Deputy Mayor, you have.
Thank you, Your Worship. The financial reports are on page 22, and the financial statements are on 23 through 26. The bylaw enforcement and animal control reports are on 27 and 28. The financial statements are included up till the end of July this year. There's no major anomalies in revenue or expenses, so we are, there's small ups and downs, but we're still on track. We submitted an application under the FCM Asset Management Plan to perform our asset management plan, as well as a tangible capital asset policy, an asset management policy, a condition assessment, and an asset management majority assessment. If successful, FCM will cover 80% of the costs of this, which means we'll get all of those done for, I think, Michael, less than the cost of doing one of them. So it'll be very handy. And asset management plans have to be now submitted to the province by the end of June of 2018. Water and sewer bills went out on the 12th of July, and the due date is August 11th. We follow up on share-off notices from October 2016, and we today have collected more than 95% of outstanding letters, or on outstanding letters. We'll be sending a reminding letter on outstanding accounts at water and sewer, and once this billing is past due, probably in early September. We're working with the province to submit our claims for the infrastructure projects to claim funds back for Lawrence Street Phase 1 and 2. We submitted our first reimbursement for a total of $144,409 and $2.91. Excuse me, and we should receive 75% of this back. Staff are going to begin working on the 2018 budget in late September, or late August into September, and there'll be consider yourselves warned, there'll be a schedule of meetings about the budget sent out shortly thereafter. And finally, staff are currently finalizing the jobs description for assistant treasurer. The position vacated at the end of June by Mary, and we hope to have this position filled by October. Bylaw enforcement and animal control statistics are attached to this report. Nothing really too much to say about them. I am left wondering, however, in the animal control report, what a bull cow might be. And that there's no motions, Your Worship.
Any questions on the report? No? No one shares the bull cow question? All right. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to item D, tourism business development. Councilor, Deputy Mayor? Are you doing tourism business development?
Still contemplating the book.
Yeah, I was still working on that one. All right, the report starts on page 29 for the tourism and business development. Visitor numbers at the VIC are up very slightly over last year, about 3%. And there's kind of a mixed message from businesses in town about whether they are up or down. Some appear to be up, some appear to be not doing as well this year. We participated in the Area 506 Festival over the New Brunswick Day weekend and had a booth at the festival and attracted a lot of attention for the town. The Cultural Coast had a conference call meeting in July to talk about an annual work plan, and there's discussion still underway about how the Cultural Coast and the Regional Service Commission Tourism Group are going to work together. Nobody's clearly worked that one out yet. The Buy Local Sackville Committee continues to meet and plan, and Julia Feltham has been named chair of that committee. Excuse me. The department continues to work on the replacement of highway sign images and the replacement of the sign near the Beach Hill Park entrance. Calls for quotes and proposals are being processed. The department is holding a Kite Experience Day on August 26th to celebrate the completion of the Trans-Canada Trail. The kite event and a short Canada 150 Plus play will be presented on the trail in the Waterfowl Park. We continue to work with on our move to Sackville and Sackville tourism videos and hope to have initial rough ones by early fall. And finally, working on creating a business package for people to contact about starting a business in town, and anticipate to have this ready for the early fall as well. And that's the report, Your Worship. There are no motions.
Thank you. Questions on the report? Councillor Evans.
The tourism director's manager's not here, so you may not be able to answer this, but that 506 conference, we have an application in to host that, I believe, and I'm just wondering, where was it held and how big an event is this? Do you know? No idea.
Excuse me. Thank you, Councillor Evans. This is the Area 506 Festival. So this is the container-themed arts, culture, and music festival hosted by the City of St. John. So 2016, they had about, I believe it was 25,000 people. I think they almost doubled the numbers in 2017. So it's different than the festival that we've made an application for.
I'm glad you clarified that because I thought that's what we're looking forward to getting. Okay. Different events. Thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay, we've moved to report E, public property and facilities. Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Worship. The information is on page 32 all the way to 35. Public Works staff has finished doing the crosswalks, directional signs and all, and they will monitor the markings going into the fall to see whether there's some wear and tear, maybe a second coating that would help us have more visibility through the winter. They finished the storm sewer extension on York Street with the exception of the paving, which will be done upon the return of our patch contractor. Additional services, utility services were also requested and installed at that time for Mount Allison, part of their renovation project. Public Works students have and will continue to trim around the fire hydrants and guardrails around the town throughout the summer and painting as time permits. Public Works Department continues to work on the addition to the steel storage building at our Public Works facility. We are expecting the project to be completed in the next few weeks. Utility Department worked on obtaining water meter reads that were not obtained during the last meter read, and they continue to evaluate the meters and determine either to fix the meters or the MX units. Utility Department worked on some minor repairs and maintenance to several sewage lift stations around the town, as well as fire hydrants, manholes, and gate valves as part of their ongoing maintenance of our storm water system. Engineering and Public Works staff continue to monitor the progress of the 2017 paving of various street contracts throughout the month of July. They worked with the contractor to ensure the work was completed as planned and kept track of materials that were used to utilize on each street as part of our PSAT. The exception of the paving on Bridge Street lift station and reconstruction project, the paving has been completed and shoulder gravels have been being replaced in the last couple of weeks. Mechanics are working on the maintenance of the Zamboni to get it ready for the winter season. The engineering department continues to work with Crandall Engineering Limited on the design of the Lawrence Street construction and storm water mitigation project. The two tenders of 2017-2 and 2017-3 for phase 1 of this project continue to progress over the month of July with the contractors of Dexter Construction and Bowser Construction respectively. The work on these two tenders appear to be on schedule at this point, thanks to the great weather we've had. Construction on these two tenders will continue through the summer and into the late fall. Crandall Engineering continued to work on the design, detailed designs for phase 2 with the details provided in the near future. The engineering department worked with Veritas Design from Riverview on the design and specifications of the beautification on exit 506. Engineering department utilized the design and specifications to issue an RFQ for the beautification. During the month of July, we received 5 quotes from local contractors, and there will be a motion coming through on that. The engineering department worked with the parks and facilities, have been working on with District 2 and a couple local contractors to establish the details and specifications provided much needed upgrades and improvements to the trail between Tantramar Regional High School and the old rail bed. These much needed improvements were agreed upon by District 2, and a motion will be coming through on that one. The engineering department has been working on the detailed specifications of a new observation tower to replace the one that was destroyed in the park several years ago. Two local and qualified contractors of Sackville were consulted to provide design build quotation for this project, and a motion will be coming through on that one. The Engineering and Public Works Department has been working with Spitfire Design Company along with Crandall Engineering to finalize the detailed design package for tender number 2017-14 for the pre-engineered storage building for EMO. 4 tenders were received for this project. A motion will be coming for that. The Engineering and Public Works Department has been working with DTI to determine a new location as well as details and specifications for a new highway sign to be located south of the Walker Road on the eastbound lane of the Trans-Canada. An RFQ was issued for the new sign and quotations were received, and a motion will be coming on that. Tantramar Veterans Memorial RFP 2015-15 canteen/bar services was issued during July. The RFP is still under review. It closed at the end of July, and the RFP is still under review and will be brought forward to council at a future council meeting. Civic Center and that contract right now doesn't expire till the end of September. Civic Center activities have slowed down during July, except for the blood donor clinic, a photography course, and Circus had rented the exterior property of the Civic Center for the August 5th. Rooms or rentals and arena floor rental, you can send your request to the bookings@sackville.com. Municipal parks, Beach Hill potable water is being tested weekly and is safe for consumption. Staff has been working with the Anglophone East School District for a reciprocal agreement for the use of the district's properties for recreation and programming purposes. The agreement is still under review and will be brought to council in a future meeting. The water is being tested at Beach Hill, at the beach at Lilas Fawcett Park weekly, and as a result, this summer have been coming back acceptable levels of E. coli for bathing and swimming. Due to ongoing vandalism, the washrooms at Lilas Fawcett Park, only one washroom is being left open for after the lifeguards are off duty in the evenings. Staff have rebuilt trails in the Memorial Park and most trails in the Waterfowl Park, and the work is still ongoing. The water level is low at Lilas Fawcett, and the public is reminded that docks are loading and unloading boats only to keep the area clear for our emergency service personnel so they have quick access to the water. The new trails have been roughed in at Beach Hill. Signage will be up soon, and this trail is a wilderness trail with rough terrain, and that should be expected. The washrooms are open at the for the public in the Bill Johnson's Memorial Park. And if you want to book sports fields or spots in the park for events, you go to bookings@sackville.com. And that is that part of the report.
Any questions for Councillor Tower? If not, you have a multitude of motions.
I do indeed. As I make the motions, I'll ask Todd to give us some background on it so a better understanding. I move that council authorize the trail improvements for the section of the trail leading from the Tantramar Regional High School's parking lot down to the rail bed to Beach Hill landscaping in the amount of $8,050 HST included, subject to the town receiving written confirmation from the New Brunswick Department of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Mitten.
Now,
Mr. Hicks?
Mr.
Would you
Hicks,
like
sir?
to give some background to that, please?
I think Mr. Cole has the information on that one.
Thank you, Councillor Tower. This trail has been underwater every spring and every fall for several years. About 7 or 8 years ago, we built a floating boardwalk in the Waterfowl Park and started redirecting traffic up over the overpass and back into the high school, unfortunately onto a wet trail. This year, when we started to negotiate with the district on the reciprocal agreement, one of the things that we approached them on was if we could use the money this year instead of going toward maintenance of the school to rebuild the trail, and they've agreed in writing. And currently, this is where we're at. The engineering department went out to tender, where I got some quotes for this trail work, and we're just, I believe now we're just waiting on the letter of consent from the Department of Transportation.
So as you recall, the reciprocal agreement was $6,000, so there's $2,000 that was coming out of operating budget from recreation. And DTI is that there's a portion of the highway right-of-way attached that runs it along or in that. So those are the two other elements that we spoke about last week. Any other questions? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Tower again.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council award tender number 2017-14 for one pre-engineered storage building to the lowest bidder, Meritech Construction Limited, Moncton, New Brunswick, in the amount of $371,011.39, HST included. And Todd, because I can't go wrong.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Mr. Hicks, background, please.
Thank you, Councillor Tower. Yes, this pre-engineered building that we've completed the design for and the tender package. We went out for tender. I guess the tender closed. I'm just looking for the date here. Yeah, recently. I don't have the date in front of me. We did receive 4 bids for this pre-engineered building, and this is our new EMO storage building to be located adjacent to the existing agricultural storage, former agricultural storage building in behind the Civic Center. This building and this tender package is based on a pre-engineered system, and when the tender package was put together, there are general contractors that carry specific pre-engineered building systems that they have the rights to tender on. So when we put this package out, we advised in our tender documents that we would accept a certain type of building system, and we approved equivalence to that, and that's what we based our tender package on, complete with a structural foundation that is designed by a structural engineer under the design team that we put together for this package. Yes, we've got some competitive results, and we're recommending award here tonight.
Mr. Beal, could you describe, we had some discussion over the full cost versus what we, how we may handle this throughout the fiscal year, please?
Yes, as council is aware, the tender as requested did come in over budget, quite a bit over budget. So one of the options within the tender was to remove the concrete slab. The recommendation is to award to the low tender less the concrete slab at this point in time. We will reevaluate in September, October, November to determine where we are overall and see if we can add that back in this year or will be required to budget for it next year. But even taking out the concrete slab within it, still put us about $30,000 over budget. So we will be using some funds from other projects that have come in under budget within our general capital budget to offset this. There was no other ways to cut this down further that within the actual tender to get it down any lower than what we had, which was removing the slab at this point in time.
Any other questions, Council, on the? Councilor O'Neill.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know we discussed this last week and so on. I'm still very concerned that it's so much over budget, and then we're talking about taking the cement floor out, and where it's for EMO items. I don't really feel I can support this motion.
Councilor Finney.
Michael, the thing is what kind of an adverse effect is this going to have without the cement platform on the stuff that's going to be stored in there?
Yeah, at this point in time, as Dwayne had said last week, we will still be able to store a fair amount of stuff. There will be some things that we will not be able to store because without the slab, it will not be a heated structure. But that would be up to between Todd, and Dwayne to evaluate which stuff could be moved from the old barn that does not require heating temporarily over to the new storage facility and maintain the stuff that requires heating in the old barn. So it still does give us expanded storage. It still does give us the ability to add on to our storage capacity. We would just have to be selective what we store in this building for this winter versus what we keep in the old storage barn that's already on site. So there will be evaluation done by staff to determine what we would store in the existing heated facility and the non-heated facility. My goal, of course, would be, if at all possible, to complete this this fall, but that will be dependent on what other budgets come in at. If not, it would be a high recommendation to complete in the 2018 budget and finish this project to its full extent, so that we're not leaving projects dragging on multiple years thereafter.
Follow-up, Councillor Finn?
Yes, could we put this off for 1 year? Do we not have things stored at the present time? And are we not capable of getting by for at least 1 more year to see whether or not we will have the money in place at the time for next year to do the project completely? I'm just curious.
We could put it off as council's prerogative if they did not wish to award the tender, being that it is 30,000 over. It is a budget item in our 2017 capital budget. 300,000 plus HST was budgeted. I'm going to have to defer over to one of the Todds here to answer the question as to whether we could accommodate with our existing. We did have, over the years, we had the former DNR building that allowed us some storage location. We had the old fire hall, which allowed us some storage. So we have lost some storage spaces over the years. But this is an EMO center. So between Todd, and even Craig, there may be some comments they wish to reflect on that question in particular. But if we didn't go ahead with it, yeah, that would have $300,000 plus in 2017's budget of unallocated funds. So it would probably be moved into the reserve fund, sort of thing. It would have to be reapproved next year, which will affect next year's capital budget. That would be the thing. It could have an effect on next year's capital budget, where the idea was to move some of these things forward this year and then continue on in 2018-19.
Just a quick thought on that. From an equipment standpoint, from a public works standpoint, we have a number of valuable capital pieces of equipment right now that are sitting outside in the weather during the winter months. Specifically, our asphalt recycling piece of equipment, which is a valuable piece of gear, as well as we've just acquired a new articulating boom that we want to get out of the weather for this winter. So, you know, essentially, this would be a cold storage building for us for this winter. We realize that, but from the EMO storage, and maybe I'll let Craig comment on that, but from an equipment storage, it's critical that we have a place to put this valuable equipment in.
Mr. Bowser?
Your Worship, members of council, as it relates to emergency measures and the supplies that we currently stock within our heated facility out back of the Civic Center, those items would still require to be maintained under a heated structure to maintain the continuity of the cots, the blankets, everything else, personal hygiene kits that are stored there at this time. So that being said, they would still need to be remaining within a heated structure.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. Michael, the cost of this, would it be more costly to build the building now with a gravel floor and pour the pad later, or pour the pad with the construction of the building? Will the pad cost the same irrespective of when it's done?
Yeah, my understanding is it is completely feasible to not pour the pad this year. They would put gravel base down for this year. The height of the building and the size of the building makes it very easy to remove the gravel base and pour a slab. There is a number. The slab was quoted separately within within the tender, so it is priced accordingly. So whether it be financially advantageous to wait, I can't answer that. It's going to depend what the cost of concrete is next year and other things. There will be additional costs, removing the gravel floor sort of thing. But again, the project has exceeded our budget to its full capacity, so no different than we do at other things. Sometimes we do things in phases and or year over year sort of thing. Whether it be more costly or not, it's a tough one. I don't know what the cost of concrete will be next year, what the cost to lay the floor would be specific. It would be a smaller tender, of course, as we would just, if it's not done this year, if it's done this year, it would be Meritech that would do it. We have the price of it. If it's done next year, we would call a new tender for just the concrete, of course, just the pouring of the concrete. So there may be some financial benefits to it, but it may also be a little higher where it's a smaller tender. So it is a difficult question to answer.
Mr. Cole?
Thank you. I'd just like to add that the current building right now is jammed to capacity. We're using it for multi-purpose, for storage, for a workshop, and for EMO storage. And most of this stuff is stored in there for EMO right now. It's getting quite dirty, and it's probably less than ideal for it to go out to an emergency, so we try to tarp it and keep it as covered up as we can. But my understanding is Mr. Bowser's trying to enhance what we have in town, and currently we can't handle any more equipment in there than we have now.
Any other questions? Councillor O'Neill?
When we had our conversation about this last Monday night, I had asked about us putting the building up the size that would accommodate the money that we had budgeted. Meant a smaller building, but we were also told it was very easy to add on to this building. And in my mind, it makes a lot more sense to build a building that has everything in it that we need, the cement floor and a building that would be finished. And then as we found that the funds came available, then we could add on to that building. As we've been told, it would be easy to do. Thank you.
Would you have to amend the tender to do something like this?
I guess just my comment on that, Councillor O'Neill, at this point, because the project has been tendered based on a specific size, our ability to go back and basically take a bay, a structural bay off the building, we may not get a competitive credit for the value of the reduction of the building at this point. So although that is an option, yes, we can go back and look at that, but the timing right now for us to go back through that process and potentially go through that might be a bit of a challenge for us to get this building up this fall and before the winter months. But certainly we could look at that option, and I'll discuss with the town engineer as to how we can go at that.
Just to add to that, worship members of council, I do not think we can go in and start slicing and dicing the existing tender. The tender stands for the building as it was tendered. There was an option with respect to the cement slab. We can do that. Beyond that, if the town's interest is to go to a smaller building, it would have to be retendered and put out, and that could happen this fall, but it would be late, obviously, or it could be done in the 2018 if council was to put the dollars available in the capital budget. So I think the approach that management looked at in this is it's really a transitionary approach in that it was put out to tender. It's higher than we had budgeted. The cement slab is an option. So I think it's really up to council in terms of, if you wish to take a transitionary approach to it in terms of getting the building and structure this year, following with the cement slab in the spring. And obviously, once the building's there, it serves our equipment storage needs, which some would empty out of the existing one in some cases to a degree. the EMO need, which is the greater need when we first started talking about this, would come later. And so it's, either way can work, it's a matter of timing as to how you wish to approach it. And there's no guarantees that if we did it next spring as a whole new tender, it might be less expensive, but it might be more too. There's nobody can guarantee or predict that.
Councillor Black?
I just wanted to say a couple of things. The slab from Meritech, I think was if the company did the slab, they were the most expensive slab that we had second most. So it might be worth it to play that game and potentially get a cheaper floor next year. We don't know, it might be more expensive, it might be less if we're putting it out for tender. The other thing to keep in mind is that this was a budgeted item, so we wanted this to be built. The extra money that we need to build it, we are taking from tenders that we were able to save some money on. And next year, who knows what's going to happen with the freeze. I mean, we don't know what our budget's going to look like. We don't know if we can put this on hold. Maybe it won't get built next year. Anyway, I just wanted to say that just in support of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Councillor Finney?
Just one more thing. The thing is can someone guarantee me that we will be putting the cement base platform in the spring? You know, if we decide to go forward with this now.
Well, I can't guarantee you that we're going to. That will be, it'll be brought forward as a recommendation and discussion during our priority session setting, through the capital budget session. And all the projects that we have that we want to move forward in 2018 will be laid out and evaluation done. But I think it would be recommended that we complete the project so that we can move on from the storage facility and then move on to other projects. So it would be council's decision and prerogative as we approach the budget session.
Okay, Councillor Mitten, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to speak in favor of this motion and awarding this tender. And I think, if nothing else, at least it does provide some more storage for some of the items that can be in cold storage this winter. And as we discussed at the discussion meeting last week, and Mr. Beal explained with our budget, there is some room where other projects are under budget that we can make up the shortfall and then hopefully have the concrete slab potentially even this year, which would be ideal. But either way, I'm going to speak in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Okay. CEO, supplement?
Sure, I guess just to respond to Councillor Finney, it's really council's decision. If council budgets $100,000 or whatever is required to do the slab, it's in there and staff will follow up on it. And I guess if I could, Your Worship, just ask one question myself. In terms of the motion and the number that's in the motion, is that with or without the slab?
That is without the slab. The tender price with the slab was a little over $419,000 HST included.
So the slab would come back anyway to council?
Yes.
Right.
Correct. If we add the slab and have the money within the budgets later this year, that will come back to council for additional resolution. Councillor Black's I guess statement saying it was the second most expensive, but it's hard to say if that is I guess coherent, because somebody may have said, well, I want the whole project, I'm not going to give as big a discount on the slab, where somebody else said, well, if they don't do the slab, I have an easier time to do this project, so I'm going to give them a bigger credit. So the slab price may or may not have been full credit for each of the 4 submitting tenders, but we had the option to remove it. So. Okay.
So, good discussion. We have a motion which is, as described, which is in the transitority phase of implementing this, which was on our capital budget for the year. So I will call for question. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Note Councillor O'Neill a nay. Was there another? No? Okay. Motion is passed. Thank you. Councillor Tower again.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council grant the temporary street closure of York Street from Salem to Lansdowne Street on Thursday, August 31st, 2017, from 3:30 PM to 4 PM for the Mount Allison University commencement ceremonies.
Moved by Councillor Tower. Seconded by Councillor Mitten. Councillor Tower?
Yeah, the biggest thing here, we've already passed a similar motion, only now Mount Allison wants to shorten the time, so it's a no-brainer. Yep.
Everybody's good? Questions on that? Question total? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Tower again?
Okay, thank you. I move that council approve the installation of 4 MAD signs. 1 to be located at the 3 main approaches to Sackville, exit 504, 506, and along Route 106, as well as an additional sign at Silver Lake.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Evans.
Yes, okay. All right, go ahead.
Councillor Evans?
I'd just like to clarify that there is nobody losing any temper here. This is Mothers Against Drunk Driving. This is an organization that is encouraging people, obviously not to drive while drunk, but also to report people that you suspect are driving. They are paying for the signs and the installation, and we are allowing them to do it on our property. So that's why I'm in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Question? Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Tower?
Okay. I move, I move that council award the RFQ for exit 506 beautification to Beach Hill Landscaping, Sackville, New Brunswick, in the amount of $20,700. HST included, subject to the town receiving written confirmation from the New Brunswick Department of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Black. Like to put context?
Well, I was going to ask Todd if he wanted to throw a few more cents worth in there.
I think I'll defer this one to Mr. Cole. More involved in this one than I would.
Thank you, Councillor Tower. As you can see, the motion is here for the amount of $20,700. The tenders came in quite a bit higher than that. However, in order to get some of the work done this year and to make it fair, the engineering department looked at all the bids, and they reduced the bids by a percentage to keep them all fair. And this would have been the lowest bidder to stay within budget and still get some work done on both sides of the exit this year.
Where to go? Councillor Black?
Just one quick question. How, do we know when we'll hear back from DTI? Just as confirmation? I mean, is this this is something that is going to happen? We're just waiting, sort of thing?
I'm not sure the timing there.
Yeah, I think that request has been made. As we're aware, these are DOT properties. Similar to exit 504, we required written approval to put anything on DOT-owned property. So the request, I believe, has been made. So the hope is that we would hear back from them very soon. Once this authorization is received, though, from council, once the purchase order will not be issued until such time as it comes. The purchase order will come with the confirmation that we've received approval. So as soon as, if you pass the resolution now, if it happens in 3 days, it'll start. If it happens in a week or 2 weeks, it will start immediately, so.
Other comments? No? Call for question? Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council award the RFQ for the supply and installation of a new highway sign to Roadway Systems Limited in the amount of $22,643.50, HST included.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Fenning.
And I think Todd Hitz can give a bit more.
Yes,
Thank you, Councillor Tower. On behalf of the town engineer who put this package together, and basically this is, this sign replacement is a relocation to suit the needs, the power needs for the sign at a new location. But this is basically an insurance claim that, and maybe Jamie Burke can give a few more details on this. I know Jamie's been involved with it, but we're just looking for council's approval to proceed with getting this work done, basically.
Mr. Burke?
Thanks, Todd. That's right, the previous highway sign that we had in the Walker Road area was destroyed by a tractor trailer in the middle of the winter last year. So we've, essentially what we're looking to do is move the sign slightly and connect it to a stable source of power. So we've been in discussions with DTI, and we're looking to get that work underway as soon as we can.
Mr. Beal, would you like to comment on this insurance relationship on this topic again?
Yeah, as it was indicated during the previous winter, a transport truck had taken down our previous sign. So immediately upon after that happening, of course, we opened a claim with our own municipal insurers. So we insure all of our own property through Cowan Insurance. So we opened a claim with them. At the point in time in the winter, of course, nothing was going to be done. So the claim has been opened but on hold, subject to us proceeding with getting the necessary prices and approvals from council. Initially, our insurers will pay us back less our deductible. They will then subrogate against the transport company. Who will then, when that's settled, we would then also receive a deductible. So we would be out the initial $5,000 for this type of claim until that happens. There's also the power aspect, which will happen through NB Power. So all these expenses, including the removal of the old sign last year and everything that took place, will be submitted to our insurance company for reimbursement. We are going to be requesting no depreciation on it and full cost because we are going with power versus battery. We did receive a quote for battery, and it's about 3 times as expensive as putting power in. It, of course, is more energy or more environmentally friendly, but much more expensive. So going with the power option, we are going to be requesting full compensation from the insurance and from the subrogate because we are going with the cheaper option, which is essentially saving them money as well. So so it will be a process of filing all invoices and quotes off to the insurance company, getting our money from them, and then them subrogating on our behalf against the third party.
Right. So we're getting a replacement sign at a better location with full power, always be lit at no cost to the property taxpayers. So, Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, Mr. Burke, I wonder if you could tell us, is there artwork that goes on that sign? If so, what? Or is it just information for people coming in on the exits into Sackville?
There will eventually be an image on it. As council may be aware, in 2017, we have capital funding approved for a new image to be on both of the highway signs. So we're going through the design review process right now. I know Mr. Kelly Sprills has recently put out a call for artists, which have been submitted, so they're currently under review. Once that image is chosen and we kind of narrow it down, we'll then come to council with an option for replacement.
Question? Question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Towers, you again?
Yes, this will be my last motion, and it has no relation to me. I move that council award the RFQ for the construction of a new 9-foot-high observation tower to the Sackville General Contractors Limited in the amount of $24,127, HST included.
Tower motion is moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Mitten.
And Todd Hicks.
Yes, as Thank you, Councillor Tower. As the information we discussed last week, this project for a new observation tower to basically replace the old one that's been gone for a few years now, I understand. The initial design costs that for the landscaping architect to put together a package for us to go out for a proper tender package on this didn't seem realistic for the scope of work that we were being asked to perform. So what we did, we went out to the expertise of two contractors in town that have performed phases of work in the waterfowl park in the past. We asked for them to use the same construction materials and basically do a design build observation tower for us, and that's how we facilitated and got these quotations in to build this observation tower. Now, original numbers that were forecasted for this expense were for the most part they were light, and it's because of the fact that this observation tower will be 9 feet in the air. So therefore we're basically building an observation tower with a complete observation deck underneath this deck. So you're actually getting a 2-level observation tower for this this recommended price. A set of stairs up to the higher level, and this entire structure will be supported on helical ties similar to the rest of the boardwalk, and the same construction details, white cedar, galvanized hardware, those type of things. So.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mitten, you have a comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to note that we do have funding that we received from Cohen Insurance and Sears Insurance. So the town will not be paying the full amount. Cohen Insurance contributed $5,000 towards this type of project, and Sears Insurance contributed $2,500 towards this type of project. So we have an incentive to move forward with this project because we have received these gifts to build a tower. Thanks.
Councillor Evans?
Yeah. And in addition, there is reason to believe that there will be support forthcoming from the Rotary Club. They were involved with the construction of the original one, and I have reason to believe that they will be supporting this project as well. But that's subject to be confirmed. So don't tell anyone. But there's a real possibility. Anyway, the point is, this is the total cost of the project. We are getting funding from 2 other sources for sure, and a 3rd one possibly. And also my understanding is we've asked the New Brunswick Trails for money as well. So there's a possibility the cost to the taxpayers will be much less than the total.
Councillor Mitten again?
I was going to mention the MB Trails part, so
okay.
That's all.
No. Councillor Black?
Thanks. And the rest of the money that would cover this, that was going to come out of money that was going to be used for Beach Hill reconstruction. Is that right?
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. When are you starting this?
We've already received a Wawa permit to go ahead and start this at any time out there in the wetlands, so we could essentially start this anytime in September. I believe the contractor's available to get it going sometime late September.
Okay, and the second question, where is it being located?
Some of you may remember when we had cultural capitals, we had a lot of artwork in the waterfowl park, and there was a skeleton of a ship with a little dock going out in between the outhouses and the Doncaster Bridge, where that little skeleton is, where that little boardwalk is now, is where the lookout is going to be. So it's in the upper compound.
Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Councillor Tower. Move on to recreation programs and events. Councillor Butcher, is that you?
So my report is on page 36 and 37. The Sackville Street Chalk Art Festival, celebrating Canada's 150-plus years, will take place from the 25th to the 26th of this month. 9 artists have been confirmed, and a full musical lineup has been booked. There's going to be interactive workshops, there's a chalk camp at Mount Allison, and lots more. So you'll be able to follow chalk footprints throughout the town to discover what's happening on that weekend. And you can visit sackville.com/sackvillechalk. Mr. Pride will be presenting on the Trailblazers After School program at the Recreation NB Conference in Fredericton in October. And our summer programs have been well attended, still ongoing, obviously, for August. In August, we have the Blueberry Social at the Drew. We've got movies at the park ongoing, and the end of summer barbecue, and bus trip to Moncton Sky Zone and the Dieppe Aquatic Center. There will be a full report on the summer activities at our council meeting in September. New Brunswick Day celebrations saw close to 500 people in the Bill Johnston Park. There was music, hamburgers, and there was a chance to drop the summer staff into the dunk tank, which I have to say is an improvement over who was getting dunked at the Salem Summer Send-Off. So that was happening at New Brunswick Day. The community development grant applications are now available online for the 2018 granting year, and the applications are due by October 15th. Our annual corn boil will take place on September 2nd from 11 a.m. until 1:30 at the Bill Johnston Memorial Park, and that's in partnership with the Sackville Farmers Market. The 3rd annual Beach Hill Park Challenge took place on July 29th at Beach Hill Park. There were 54 races aged between 5 and 55, so that was well attended. And we are offering an ultimate Frisbee night on the 22nd of August at the Lawrence Street Soccer Field, and that's for ages 14 up. The Biking Without Barriers accessible bicycle has been ordered, and it should be arriving within the month. So if there's anyone wishing to volunteer to pilot the bicycle, they should contact Town Hall for information on training for that. The Sackville Arts Wall induction ceremony will be held on October 1st at the Sackville United Church, and there will be more details on that to come. Our 17th Fall Fair will take place this September 14th to 17th. And this year we're going to have bubble soccer, fireworks at the high school, Kenny James, Brian Mallory, ECMA nominees Wolf Castle and Red Sugar, and Juno nominee Colorado. And there will be a newly revamped Family Day at the Doncaster Farm. And the 2017 Pride Parade will be held on October 12th, pending a motion that I have. And it will hopefully be starting with speeches beginning at 5:30 at Mount Allison. The library report, statistically, the library here continues to lead the pack for one-person libraries, meaning one person employed, often surpasses some of the 2 and 3 people libraries in our region. We had 96 young readers sign up for the Summer Reading Club, and they've read over 800 books together. There's been 3 summer students operating programs Tuesdays through Saturdays since July 27th for toddlers through to tweens. And 1,520 people visited the library in July. Some days there were more than 100 users there, which is pretty amazing for our little library. We also had an NB author, Joanne Hamilton Berry, was there on the 25th. She did a presentation on her Hackmatack Award-nominated book, Oak Island and the Search for Buried Treasure. And the Port Elgin Library has temporarily closed, so their library manager will be coming to join the team in Sackville starting in September. So our library hopefully will be able to offer more programs this fall and winter as a result of that. And that is the end of my report. If anybody has any questions.
Councillor Evans?
I have a question. If we get another librarian, is our record as a one-person library going to be tarnished and we will no longer be eligible for the title we've held for so long? I mean, this is serious stuff. And the second one, I have it on good authority that in addition to the other activities you mentioned at Bill Johnstone Park on New Brunswick Day, there was some very good cake served very well by some skilled professionals, and I just thought I'd point that out.
I didn't see that. Didn't either. Councillor Butcher,
My motion, are we ready for that?
are there any other questions on the report?
Okay. I move that council grant the temporary street closure of York Street from Salem Street to Main Street, as well as Main Street from York Street to Town Hall from approximately 5:45 PM to 6 PM on October 12th, 2017 to accommodate the Pride Parade.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Want to place context in? This is something we've now done last year, the year before?
Third year.
Procession from the flag at Mount Allison to our flag here, and then returning back to the Johnstone Park afterward. Are there? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Butcher. Move to public safety. Which one's starting? Councillor O'Neill.
I'll do the report from the fire chief. The Sackville Fire and Rescue responded to 12 calls for service in the month of July, which included 5 commercial fire alarms, 3 motor vehicle collisions, 1 mulch fire, 1 smoke alarm activation, 1 utility pole fire, and 1 vehicle fire. The calls for service to date in 2017 are up 17 calls compared to the time frame in 2016. The fire department held training sessions during the month of July, ladder placement, self-contained breathing apparatus, roof ventilation, breaching of walls, pump operations, station and equipment checks, as well as training with our rescue boats in Silver Lake. So you can see the department doesn't just answer calls. They're busy training for those calls that do come in. Currently, they have a full roster of 43 professional volunteer fighters. On Tuesday, August the 4th, there was a tour of Town Hall and the Emergency Service Building. This was given to our newest family who are Congoleese. There will be a motion coming forward this evening to purchase bunker gear. And just a reminder that their annual truck draw tickets are out and about again. And of course, the department's looking for our support. And a reminder, rubbish fires are strictly prohibited with town limits. And I guess that you can have, if you have an outdoor wood burning appliance, there's certain sizes and so on that can be used. And I would suggest anybody that thinks they would like to have one that they contact the chief so that he can make sure that they get what they really should be using. And I think that's all of the report there, and I'll make a motion. If there's any questions, I'd ask you to direct them to the chief, please.
Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Worship. Craig, how are the tickets selling? Are they above usual, or?
Thank you, Councillor Tower, Your Worship, members of council. The tickets are always slow starting, and we get, once again this year, a lot of folks wait till the last minute to purchase tickets, which is not ideal because it makes it a large commitment at the end of the draw. But that being said, they're pretty well online, as it were, for the same numbers as last year. I don't have that exact number, but they're within the same range.
Thank you, Craig. We had, our last mayor was willing to shave his head if you didn't reach a certain number. Now, for this mayor, it would be quite safe for him to do it. So I was kind of curious, maybe we could get the deputy mayor to volunteer to have his head shaved.
At least the beard.
I was gonna buy a ticket.
Oops, sorry.
In a word, though.
Okay.
The motion?
Yes, please.
I move that council authorize the purchase of 3 sets of Starfield Lion bunker gear from Micmac Fire and Safety Source Limited in the amount of $10,177.50, HST included. And
Moved by
perhaps
Moved by
maybe,
Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Tower.
maybe the chief would like to speak on that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill, Your Worship, members of council. Every year, we budget a certain number of sets of bunker gear to keep our firefighters safe in the latest and greatest technology that comes out within the firefighting equipment. That being said, this year, we originally budgeted for 4 sets of gear. We've backed it down to 3 sets of gear to help assist with the shortfall on one of our previous tenders that we committed to, drawing back on our capital projects to help offset with that shortfall. So that is where approximately $3,000 out of this project is going towards.
Question? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Black?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to freestyle this a little bit and start with the CPO report, which is found on page 41 and 42. Every month that goes by that we have the CPO report, it's pretty much the same thing. He just continues to be a shining example of his position in our town. He keeps involved in the community. He has various committees, 8 of which he's listed in this report. But what's most important, and we had a discussion before our special council meeting with him about his active youth files, which I should say he also reiterated that he does a lot of work with adults as well. But he told us a story of one of the youth that he's involved with calling him late at night, I think on a weekend, and felt that he was in a little bit of trouble and asked if he, our CPO, would phone the RCMP for him. It just goes to show his talent and his skill at helping the youth in our community, that they would trust him enough to be able to call the RCMP on their behalf. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that he just continues to do amazing work in town. The RCMP report is on page 40. The RCMP was busy this month with a 36% increase in calls for service over the same period last year. There was no particular area of concern with regards to this increase. General assistance calls continue to account for the majority. Property crimes increased by 10% over the previous month when they had decreased by 10%. Police officers continue to conduct street checks and monitor prolific offenders. Reported property crimes have remained at the same level throughout the past several months, which is a good sign. Sackville detachment members are preparing once again for the students to return to local schools in Mount Allison, so they've been doing a lot of work in that area. Sergeant Paul Gagne will be returning to the Sackville detachment in the near future, as the position in Moncton has been awarded to someone from the outside area. Corporal McDonnell will be transferring to the Kodiak RCMP in the near future, probably sometime in September. And last but certainly not least, the Sackville detachment dealt with a very tragic, fatal traffic collision on the outskirts of the town of Sackville. A young adult male individual was charged in connection to the incident with dangerous driving. It should be said that our entire town felt the impact of this awful occurrence and shook a collective head in anger at why and how it happened. Corporal McDonnell had asked us previous to our special council meeting that whenever we had a chance to mention the risks of dangerous driving, that we should do so, which is a municipal, provincial, and federal issue. And our hearts and thoughts go out to the families involved. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. I would add that both the CAO and I have been invited to meet the what's his title? District Super CAO? Commanding Officer. Later this week, and along with other municipal agreement holders. So we'll report back on what that has to say. Any questions on the report? No. Do you have a motion? No, you don't. No? No motion. Okay. Thank you. We move to policy bylaw. Oops. Councillor Black.
Thank you again. The policy bylaw report is on page 43 of the package. During the policy bylaw meeting of July 20th, staff noted that they had revised the draft donations and memorial policy with the recommendations suggested at that June meeting. This policy was drafted as staff have received several requests over the last several months from the general public, special interest groups and individuals, and Sackville residents for the planting or designation of memorial trees or the placement or designation of memorial benches on municipal lands. Staff outlined the changes in detail as discussed at the last meeting, and further recommendations were suggested. Staff have made these changes in the document that follows. And I have a motion for that. Should I do that first and then continue on? No? Okay. The Policy Bylaw Liaison Group also discussed with the recent announcement from the New Brunswick government regarding a freeze in property assessments in 2018. Staff have created a resolution to be submitted to UMNB for the 2017 annual conference coming up this year. Staff also had contacted at the time Mr. Raymond Murphy with UMNB, who indicated that 3 municipal associations have requested an urgent meeting with the department and will continue to press the issue and keep us informed as things develop. And that's the report, aside from the motions.
Questions on the report? No? Move to motion.
I move that council approve the donations and memorial policy, policy number 2017-04.
Moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Evans. And
can I just speak to it for a second?
Yep.
Just a quick note. We had discussed this, then it went back to policy again, we discussed it again, then it came to special council meeting where we discussed it again, and aside from a few grammatical errors and a couple of quick fixes, what's in the package is the final policy that we're going to be voting on.
any other questions on it? We had a long discussion last week. Everybody's comfortable? Call the question. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Second motion.
I move that whereas the New Brunswick government recently announced its intention to implement a freeze on property assessment for 2018, except for new construction and renovations on tax, and whereas the government plans to introduce the new legislation this fall, and whereas this has significant financial implications on all municipalities in New Brunswick, as property assessment tax is the primary source of revenue, and whereas the property tax assessment freeze will result in a significant loss of revenue that may adversely affect the quality and provision of programs and services for our residents, and whereas the government did not consult with municipalities on the effects of such a policy change or explore other options, now therefore be it resolved that the town of Sackville urges UMNB to meet with the government to represent New Brunswick municipalities advocating the provincial government to consider another option or amendment other than the proposed property tax assessment freeze in 2018 as outlined, such that municipalities are able to sustain a stable source of revenue to deliver the municipal programs and services to our citizens.
Moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Had a long chat about this topic multiple times. Are there any questions on it or any clarifications needed? It's a request for UMNB to discuss the matter and see if there's any options. Call for question. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Motion is carried. You have a third, I believe.
Yep. Whereas the New Brunswick Department of Environment and Local Government has received the McKendy Report on improving regional service commissions in New Brunswick and is currently consulting with the regional levels of government, and whereas the delivery and costs of local services and programs being delivered by regional governments has significant implications for local communities, and whereas there has not been any communication on this matter with the local governments and no indication of an intent to consult directly with the local municipalities, now, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Sackville hereby requests UMNB to formally approach the New Brunswick Department and local government to engage in consultation process with local municipalities on the effects and implications of proposed policy changes and be open to exploring other viable options.
Moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Finney. I'd like to speak to this. As you know, I sit on the regional board, and this was a decision by the province to engage someone to speak to the boards about what the future of the board should look like. And there is a draft report that has been issued, not yet public, but it has wide-ranging recommendations that fundamentally change the nature of the Regional Service Board as we know it right now to something quite different. And we just are uncomfortable with where this sits, where it's going to go, and this offers the opportunity to have at least an informed discussion with municipalities about what the implications are in some of these items, and the municipalities have not been involved to this extent, to any extent yet so far. So that is background. Any other comments? Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to reiterate what the mayor has said. There's several things that we deal with that the public really never sees, and this is one of them. The recommendations in this McKendy report, I read it once with a sense of disbelief, and then again with a sense of pretty scared about it. It will, if you take the report to its full extent, it almost wipes out municipalities. I mean, it takes over so many services that it's difficult to see what we would do. So it's, and like the mayor said, it's been done without any consultation with us. And it's just a report commissioned by the province delivered to the Service Commission without the municipalities being involved. So I suspect we'll keep people apprised of what's going on as far as we can. Thank you.
Call question? Those in favor? Aye. Oh, sorry.
I think everybody knows I've never been in favor of the regional service commissions. I've been to a lot of the meetings, and I really truly believe that the province wants to take over control of all municipalities to do with whatever they want. And before long, I truly believe there will be no municipal governments at all. So if we allow this to continue on without any consultation, or I think we're just going to be going to the wayside, and the province will be telling us what we can and cannot do. They're pretty much telling us that now. So that's how I feel about it.
Thank you, Councillor Finney. Sorry I didn't catch your light there. I will ask, I'll ask again, those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Black. I think that's it for you, is it? Move to personnel.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Personnel Committee of Mayor John Heim, Councillor Bill Evans, and myself met with our CAO on August the 3rd. And just some of the highlights. As of the last pay period in June, there were 37 permanent employees and 36 summer staff. Departments are well underway with summer programs, and I think all of the summer students by now have been hired and are all working, and I'm sure Todd's finding lots of jobs for them. As previously reported last month, the assistant treasurer resigned, and the town will be proceeding to publicly advertise for that position in the near future. And I have a motion, Your Worship, and based on the last motions that we heard concerning UMNB, this one is, I move that council authorize the following people to attend the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick Conference in Fredericton, New Brunswick from September the 29th, 2017 to October the 1st, 2017. And we are to report back to council, Mayor John Heim, Deputy Mayor Ron Aiken, Councillors Joyce O'Neill, Bruce Finney, Allison Butcher, Andrew Black, Bill Evans, Megan Mitten, and Michael Tower.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill. Seconded by Councillor Finney. Any comments or questions? Councillor O'Neill?
Thank you. I might say that it seems like, I guess, every one of us are going, but it's because we really feel so concerned over what's taking place, and the more voices that's there, we're hoping that they'll really know how at least Sackville feels. So, thank you.
Councillor Black?
I just wanted to say for the record that I will be there. I'll be arriving late on Friday night, so I'll be there for Saturday and Sunday, but not on Friday. So I apologize for that, but it's the best that I could do.
I just want to agree with Councillor O'Neill that there's topics like this McHenry report, the property tax freeze, the incoming legislation, which is due to take place in January, policing contracts, cost of it. There's a lot of topics. We've raised several in our own zone meetings that we've asked this body to look at, and we've also asked to go to FCM on a national basis with some of these things. So there is a lot of things we've put into that pot that we need to follow up on as well when we're there. So call for the question. Oh, sorry.
I just want to say, as a matter of fact, with all of us going, it's not only to express ourselves, but it's also to find out how the other municipalities feel as well. We get a chance to talk to everybody throughout the province, and that turns around and gives us some confirmation as to what we're doing, because I think a lot of them are probably feeling pretty much the same we are. But it gives us a great chance to talk to the other councillors throughout all the other municipalities, and there's no other way to really collect this information other than by going there and being there. So I find it's just a great asset for us to be there. Thank you.
And it'd be different without Raymond this year. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Corporate Affairs and Strategic Development. Councillor Butcher.
Thank you. The report is at the end of the package on page 56 and 57. So we met on July 26th. Staff continues to assist the Engineering and Public Works Department on the Lawrence Street Stormwater Mitigation Project, and staff are assisting with the communication strategy and the preparatory work for Phase 2. As reported in July, staff applied to acquire the Crown Reserve Road in the Stanley Drive area, and were advised by the Crown Lands branch of the New Brunswick Department of Natural Resources that the application was approved. So a tentative plan has now been prepared by Rayworth and Roberts Surveys Limited, which staff are reviewing with the Crown Lands branch. Staff attended an NB Select Committee on Cannabis public consultation in Moncton on July 26th. Staff felt that it was important to attend to ensure that the town remains up to date on the province's plans for implementation in July of 2018. And staff are progressing the projects included in our Canada 150 funding that was under the municipal development to commemorate Canada 150. All the work associated with the application needs to be completed by December 31st of this year. An RFP for the George Stanley sculpture was issued on July 18th and closed on August 2nd. We had 2 proposals being submitted, and there's a motion going forward tonight at the end of this report. Early reports from the organizers of Sappy Fest 12 have indicated that the weekend was a great success. A lot of people were in town to participate in the festival, and the Lawrence Street detour seemed to work very well, and staff are very pleased with the coordination and communication with organizers leading up to, during, and following the festival. And we were pleased to paint 3 crosswalks in the community to help pledge our support for diversity in the LGBTQ community, following a friendly challenge from the village of Capillet. So on August 2nd, the mayor and several councillors joined the Mount Allison University President Robert Campbell, MassU President Sarah Camus, MassU VP External Danica Garner, LGBTQ advocate Janet Hammock, and others to help with the finishing touches on the crosswalk by the library, and then it was quickly switched. So now we have the correct colors as well, which we're very pleased about. And the Community Partnerships Working Group met on July 11th, and the meeting was used to discuss plans for new neighborhood events in the fall and a second door-to-door campaign and an off-campus student mixer, and increase public awareness on the group's mandate, and to share details around orientation week. And the group was also scheduled to meet again in August, which I think has happened. And the Heritage Board met on July 18th. There were no permit applications submitted. The board is currently exploring the potential for signage improvements in the Heritage Conservation Area and is considering future changes to the Heritage Conservation Grant criteria. That's the end of my report.
Proceed with motions. I see no questions on your report.
Okay. I need to turn that page again. I move that council approve the request for proposal of Christian Toth, Brookside NS, for the George Stanley sculpture in the amount of $52,900, HST included.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Tower. Speak to it.
Jamie, would you like to?
Thanks, Councillor Butcher. This is part of the Canada 150 funding. So as council's aware, we had applied for 6 individual projects to make up the total $150,000. So one of the individual projects was a full-size bronze sculpture of Mr. George Stanley. So we went out with an RFP process. We had 2 submissions. Of the 2 submissions, one of them unfortunately didn't meet the minimum requirements of the RFP. And that left with Mr. Toth, who, as you may know, completed the sculpture for us as part of our COA funding with the Bridge Street redevelopment project and Heron's Watch, which we now have at the corner of Weldon Street and Bridge Street. So we're very pleased that we have a very qualified individual who has submitted, and we've reached out to the Stanley family and made sure they're aware of the RFP closing of the submissions, and we got the go-ahead to proceed to award the work tonight.
Excellent. Any other questions? Call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Second motion?
Yes. I move the council authorize staff to proceed with an application for funding to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities under the Municipalities for Climate Innovation Program as discussed during the in-camera meeting of August 8th, 2017.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. All those? Pardon me? Councillor Finney, you have a? No? I think we're all here for the in-camera session where we discussed this. And any other commentary or questions? Call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. And Councillor Butcher, you have an additional motion as well.
I think that Councillor Mitten is looking up to that one.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have another motion. I move that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal all easements, options to purchase, which include all notices and additional agreements and instruments required to complete the transactions, and all other permanent documents required to purchase all properties associated with Phase 1 and 2 of the Lawrence Street reconstruction and stormwater mitigation as presented at the closed in-camera meeting of Thursday, August 10th, 2017.
Moved by Councillor Mitten, seconded by Councillor Black. Called for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. There is no new business. We would have added that already, so we would move to question periods from the press.
So I take it that there will be no need for expropriation on the Lawrence Street projects? I thought that there was the question of someone not willing to grant the easement.
Yes, I believe that
It's
we're
been resolved.
restricted in what we can say by the Act because it's land and legal questions, but there is no reference to expropriation in that motion, so I would agree with your assumption.
Okay. I'm wondering where the EMO equipment is stored now.
Mr. Bowser?
Currently, the EMO equipment is stored at the rear of our Civic Center, which is also our reception center in the event of an EMO situation.
In a heated facility there.
That is correct.
Okay. I'm wondering too about the possibility, I haven't heard anything about this, of the construction of a pedway over the Trans-Canada Highway to link to the trail, to remove that jog that people, the cyclists and joggers, have to do over the bridge. Since we were discussing the flooding there, I'm wondering if there's any thought that that project, which was discussed in the 90s and again in the 2000s, whether that might come forward at any time.
I think it's raised with me on a regular basis around town as something that some people would like to see happen. So I think it continues to be on the radar. We were surprised to find out that Oxford was able to get a tunnel under the Trans-Canada to take their trail under that barrier. And that got us thinking again about whether there may be another option for us in terms of making an argument at least. So I don't think it's ever gone away. I think there is a group in town that wants it to happen. I think it's a question of timing and costs and priorities.
Now, I'm wondering if I understood the deputy mayor correctly, that the McKenzie report has not yet been made public? It's not available?
I don't believe it is.
Okay. And finally, I'm wondering about the drive-through at exit 506, where all that stands now. You have a report from Sharon Hicks on her views of the thing, and where does council go from here, or where are we going?
Well, as described, our original plan, we don't have a proposal for a drive-through at 506 right before us right now. One could come forward. There was the one-year issue of that. That has now passed. If there was one to come forward, again, it could be entertained. We don't have one right now. The plan was that we would assess the infrastructure in that area and what was needed to make it more appropriate for development, and then soon after discuss what the bylaw situation looks like and how it can be used to enhance that development there as well.
Is that assessment, the infrastructure assessment, underway?
Yes. I believe the money's been set aside, and there is a, would you like to?
Yeah, during the 2017 budget process, council indicated that there were two projects related to exit 506. One was the beautification side of things, which we allocated 2017 capital funding for. The other was the more planning, functional planning study for exit 506, which at the time we agreed would be allocated from the council priorities line item. We're getting very close to going out to an RFP for that study. A draft has been made. We're just making some final tweaks on it before we then send it out to NBON.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just have a question about the exit 506 beautification. It was mentioned that the tender was kind of scaled back from its original form, and I'm just wondering what work will be done this year and what's kind of being put off until future years.
I'll ask Mr. Beal, but the council's, as Mr. Burke just said, the council's decision earlier this year was to set aside $20,000 in the budget for beautification and presumed that would be sufficient.
Right.
It's the design that came in much different than the resources, and I'll ask Mr. Beal to talk a little bit about the RFQ on that.
Yeah, our engineer had issued a request for quotations based on the scope of work that was originally proposed, I believe. So that when the quotes come in, I believe from 5 contractors, the lowest price put us substantially over budget. So what the decision was is that the overall scope of the project would be reduced so that all portions of the project, all the on-ramps that were originally scheduled to be done would be done, but would be done at a little bit lower scale. So the project will be going forward as planned, as was submitted in the quotation, but each of the areas will be scaled back proportionately to meet the budget.
And what specifically will be done within that tender? The plantings, landscaping, like?
There
what are
are,
the specifics?
do you know, Jamie?
It's a combination of some tree thinning, some planting, some raised beds at strategic points that can be visible from an automobile. So it's really directed to several focused areas within the Exit 506 area, because we do have visibility and a bit of I guess, a wet issue around some of the approaches, but it is a combination of some tree thinning and certainly some new plantings.
Thank you.
That's it for press. Any questions from audience?
Your Worship, Council, I have two questions. The first one is related to Exit 506. First of all, on behalf of the Exit 506 Committee, I'd like to say thank you for the approval of the $20,700. And Katie asked the same question, and I don't know that we got the answer that she was looking for, definitely not the answer that I was looking for. I know I was involved in the meetings with the design, and there was to be rose bushes planted. So coming from Nova Scotia, at the Y, there was going to be some rose bushes planted there and some maples, some tree thinning. At the time, the area needed to be bushwhacked, which the province has done since then. And then there was going to be some wildflowers planted along the side of the exit. Now, my understanding was in the discussion, we did figure it would come in higher than what was budgeted. So the discussion was that the wildflowers wouldn't be done this year. So I don't know, Jamie can answer this, but, so I'm assuming that, is there enough, I guess, in the budget still to do the rose bushes, or has it even been decided? Like, I know that it's been scaled back, but has it been decided exactly what's gonna be done?
What we ended up deciding to do was to reduce the per-unit plantings by 40%. So basically, any species that we were considering planting will still be planted, but at a reduced rate of 40%.
Okay, so will you still do the wildflowers this year?
I think the wildflowers are one of the things that we eliminated due to budgetary reasons, but the rest of them would be based on a per-unit basis.
Okay, so when it was quoted like in the increments so that you could make that decision, I'm assuming?
Exactly,
Yeah,
and I guess that was one of the benefits with working with a landscape architecture firm, that they advised us that, for budgetary reasons, in order to be a bit flexible on the pricing,
Okay.
that we get bids on a per-unit basis, and that allows us to make reductions as necessary, which we're doing here.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have is about crosswalks. In July 2016, I asked if we could have a crosswalk installed from Balter Place to King, and another one out the intersection from the industrial park across Bridge, because there's a lot of traffic there. That was in July 2016. I was told at the time it would be put on the list. I emailed the CAO in October 2016 asking for an update on it, and was told that it would be put on a list to be evaluated. So I'm wondering a year later what the evaluation is of the crosswalk for those two areas.
It's still with the engineer. I haven't received any report back on the evaluation of the crosswalks yet.
So do we have any expectation of when you'll receive that? I mean, it's been a year now since I've asked. My kids will be graduated by the time I get crosswalks there.
He has a lot on his list right now in terms of the projects that he's working on. I'd have to see where that stands on his priorities, unless council wants to push it right to the top of the list. But he's got other items that he's working on. I can't give you a guaranteed time as to when he's going to bring it forward, but I can check and see where it's at.
Okay,
and
I didn't
let you
see
know
it
at the
in the
next month.
Okay, I didn't see it in the report at all, like in the things that were being worked on, so that's why I'm asking.
So what was that you said? What was your last part there? You will have.
I could check with the engineer and find out where he's at in terms of reporting back on the evaluation of the crosswalks.
Okay, so you'll email me, or?
I said I'd bring it next month back to the meeting here so that publicly it can be stated.
Okay, I'll come to the next meeting, thank you.
Mayor and Council, I'm Percy Best. It was mentioned tonight on Stevens Drive, that's been repaved. There's no turnaround at the end for school buses or anybody. It's just a dead end. And of course, that needs to be addressed as a radius turnaround or something practical. When Bridge Street has its infrastructure changed and a lift station goes in, lift pump at the bottom of Bridge by the abutment for the old car bridge, automotive bridge, just wanted to make sure that the lift station won't be a hindrance to having a turnaround placed there as well. The future shows that that will probably be a much busier area. There's a lot of dog walkers, hikers, people go down there and take pictures, and right now, of course, they park on the side of the road normally. So I'm wondering if a parking area could be included on the right-hand side going down for the future, because it's such a nice area to be able to go out on the dikes on either side and walk. If in the wintertime, when people go down there to walk their dogs and that, there's a problem with the snowplow, of course, even getting it down and turning around. You can't park on the road, so it's almost like off limits for the winter. Although the dike is plowed all the way out, of course, on a daily basis out to the gates. So just wondered what the status is on that. Paving will be done probably in a couple of months after the infrastructure goes in, so just want to make sure that it's a complete job. Thank you.
Can we respond to that right now?
Sure, please.
I'm just asking if we can respond to that. We probably need to talk with Dwayne. Yeah. So we'll bring that answer as well to the next meeting, the next discussion meeting.
I know it's being done right away. That's why I wondered if we could just make sure it gets included. It's quite important to be able to have a turnaround down there.
No, it sounds like a logical question, so thanks. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So make a note of that, end of Bridge Street and the sewage transfer. Any other questions? Hearing none. Councillor Tower moves adjournment. Oh, sorry. Oh. Seconded by Councillor Finney. Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you all.